Welcome.
Hi, I'm Katie Morrell. I'm a creative and writer based in Bend, Oregon.
And I'm Karen Hawkins. I am the founder of Rebellious Magazine for Women and co-publisher and co-editor-in-chief of the Chicago Reader.
You are listening to Of Course I'm Not Okay, the podcast. Join us as we talk about mental health, coping with quarantine, and creativity.
For some of our episodes, we'll talk with writers, creatives, and activists to get their take. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Today's episode of Course I'm Not Okay, the podcast, is brought to you by Rebellious Magazine. No, I know you've never heard of it. It's okay. It's fine. Listen, it's at rebelliousmagazine.com. It's a feminist magazine. It was founded by a mouthy Black lesbian, and if you give a shit about mouthy Black lesbians, you should read it, and you should send us money. rebelliousmagazine.com.
Don't miss it. Check it today. Hey, hi, Karen. Happy Mlk Day. Happy 2 days before the inauguration.
Hi, Katie. It's really good to see you. Happy MLK Day. Oh, let's just get through this.
Let's just get through this. Exactly. Let's just get through, breathe one breath at a time. Just, that's the way I'm doing it. I am, like many people, losing a tremendous amount of sleep, and Mitch McConnell is haunting my dreams. But outside of that, I'm doing great. Just great.
Yep. Outside of that, just crawling along. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
how I feel.
Just thriving. But yes, I mean, I will tell you that outside of the inauguration news, I did go to the DMV. I went back to the DMV this morning. And for listeners who've been listening for a while, in this season, I guess it was in December, I went to the DMV and I had a less than optimal experience, and I went back today. And it was really good. I went at 8 a.m. Word to the wise, if anyone's looking for appointments at the DMV, I highly recommend, if you can fit it into your schedule, to go as early as possible because there's just not as many people and you get through quicker. I was in line at 7:50. I was at home by 8:24. It was
What?
Yeah, right? I know. It was like super fast. So, and it was also like everyone there, not to no shade on DMV employees, but they were all fresh. Everyone was like 2 sips into their coffee mug. Like everyone was just in a real chipper fucking mood. And so it like really worked out. It's great.
I can't congratulate you enough. And I also want to highlight that you were in Oregon. So fellow Chicagoans, there are no guarantees that you're going to have a similar experience. I mean, I hope that you do, but yeah.
That's a very good point. Yeah, because if someone's in a major suburban, or not suburban, but a major urban area, I mean, 8 a.m. is the same as probably 4 p.m. So sorry about that. But yeah, in Bend, it's a little bit more sparse in terms of how many people. But at 4 p.m., I will tell you never to go, ever. You'll never get in. And so that's what I learned from my last experience. But yeah, I mean, that started the day okay. And then, yeah, I mean, it's just, I feel like it's kind of like we're in slow motion or something like that. That's kind of how I feel. Like we're kind of going through mud and then you hit a rock. This is a weird analogy that I'm making up on the spot, but like, like you're like hitting a rock, like every time you hear something horrible. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I'm with you. To me, the slow motion, it feels like an avalanche. Like it just feels like the ground is constantly just shifting downward under our feet. And then the rock analogy also works because then we just like slam into them.
Yes.
And bounce off and keep rolling down the mountain. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it's like, and I kind of am one of those people where I'm like, oh, do I want to open my eyes to all the snow falling on my head, which is the definition of turning on NPR on my headphones? Like that is me looking at snow in the avalanche analogy, which I think is brilliant. And I think the thing is like right now we're like minute by minute wanting to know what's going on. And I mean, you just before we started recording were talking to me about these secret tours, and people, if you don't know, like they're apparently right, like there were apparently secret tours of the Capitol.
Not secret, suspicious was the word that was used.
Suspicious.
the day before the insurrection, members of Congress and some of the Capitol Police were giving tours of the Capitol that, in hindsight now, to members of Congress who are veterans, feels suspicious. Like, how did people during the insurrection find the unmarked office of this congressman of color? How'd they find where AOC was? Like, yeah, so now they're looking back at these suspicious tours.
Yes, that is absolutely like, that's like, I just feel abject terror in hearing that. Like, that's just like, oh my God. And so that's another avalanche rock or mud rock, depending on your choice of analogy. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel right now. And how about you? How are you doing?
I want to be in the middle of the avalanche and look around and have it be like a snow globe. Like, oh, I'm just suspended in this avalanche and isn't that all pretty? But no, those are shards of ice and they're just hitting me in the head. So I am also feeling incredibly anxious and chasing down every detail, even though it just adds to my anxiety, right? Like, I am in this stage of feeling like I want to know absolutely everything. I want to understand absolutely everything about what happened because I am watching all of these people try to minimize it. Or, I mean, the head of the Fraternal Order of Police in Chicago said horrible things about it, just making it sound like, people got rowdy, big deal, right?
Oh,
Like, I feel like we cannot let the same thing that happens throughout American history happen again, that we minimize events that are traumatic, or we try to bury them, or we just try to make them less than what they were, I guess, like minimizing, right? And so I just feel like I'm chasing down every detail.
yes, yes. I think that you're not alone. Like, I think that, I mean, I give you a lot of credit for even having the stomach for like that, because that's the challenge for me. It's like I'm learning things here and there, and then I have a deep dive into NPR or a deep dive into the Washington Post website or whatever it is, and then I'm like, holy shit. And it's like coming up for air can be so hard. And then I find myself getting just angry all the time. And I find myself, like last night there was an interview with the former FBI director James Comey, which of course all of us remember from the email scandal with Clinton, and whew, deep breaths. But he was being interviewed, and it was interesting because he's coming out with a new book, and the interview was fine, and I actually thought that there were some really good points that he made in terms of like what happened, and kind of from a perspective of a former law enforcement officer, and how horrible that was handled by Capitol Police and like DOJ and all of it. The one thing though that really bothered me about what he said was he was adamant that he thinks that Trump should be prosecuted for the crimes that he committed before becoming president, which obviously he should, but he does not think that he should be prosecuted for the crimes that he committed during his presidency, because if he was prosecuted, we would be subject to seeing him in Senate hearings and investigations and trials for at least 3 to 5 years of our lives immediately after Trump leaving office. And I looked at that and I was like, wait, what? Like, what the fuck? Like, so we're not supposed to, I mean, whatever, he's going to get prosecuted. I just feel very much like he's like, I just think that it would not heal the nation. This is what he said. And we need healing. And I was like, healing will come when justice comes for this absolute monster. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and that's some shit a straight white man says.
Exactly.
That's some shit somebody who's never been a victim of anything says. Like, oh, we don't want to just keep traumatizing people, or we don't want to keep putting this in front of people. Well, you've never had to live with something all day, every day that was horrible. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
James Comey, you shut it. Just
Yeah,
go sit
exactly.
down somewhere.
Right. Just go sit down and cry in a corner and don't come out. Yeah.
I mean, that is exactly what I mean by like, we can't let them just make this go away. We can't let them disappear this.
No. No. Exactly. Exactly.
Ugh.
So that's where we are. I hope all you listeners are doing okay and finding your own ways to cope with whatever anger or avalanche rocks, mud rocks that you're experiencing at the moment. But I love the idea that you mentioned before we got on this call, Karen, which is escapism. And this is, I mean, talk about turning something on its head. Like it's, we're all kind of, I don't want to speak for everyone, obviously, but like a lot of us are really, really, really scared and concerned. And we have a lot of very valid reasons for that right now. And um, I think escapism is kind of the perfect thing to talk about right now because we all need a little bit of that for our mental health.
Absolutely. Yes. And, as we were talking about, like, we are talking on whatever day it is.
I
This will
think
not
it's 18th, right?
Oh, wait. So we're talking, it's Thursday.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. This will come out on Monday. We have absolutely no idea what the next 4 days will bring. We don't know what the world is going to look like when you are listening to this. And so we wanted to make sure we talked about something that gave you a little, just was a little positive and was a little break. And I almost feel like we should put a disclaimer at the beginning of this episode, like, okay, we talk about some heavy shit in the beginning, and then starting at the 4-minute mark, we start talking about Bridgerton, which I haven't seen. I don't know anything about it, but you know what I mean? Like,
yes, 100%.
Like, there's a bunch of sour at the beginning, and the sweet starts at like 4 minutes or something.
4 minutes and 31 seconds. You can just fast forward it to right now, listener. Like this is where the happiness starts. So I'll start with my escapism over the holidays. I watched all 16 hours of the first season of Outlander, which came out quite a while ago, but it's on Netflix now. The first 3 seasons are, apparently there are 6 seasons on Stars, which is a different news or not news, but television station. But anyway, I gotta say, Karen, it was great. But really, what was great about it was the sex scenes. I have
really an Outlander.
Yeah, you don't. Okay, so if you're listening and you're like, "What?" Well, first off, if you're listening and if you read the book, then you're like, "Yeah, no shit," because the entire book is kind of known for this. But it's not like a 50 Shades of Grey situation. It's not like cheesy and in fill in the blank of whatever you think about 50 Shades of Grey. Not that 50 Shades of Grey is horrible, but I wasn't a huge fan. But anyway, the book itself is like, so the first book, there's many books. The first book is the first season of the show. And I will say that it's very violent. The last 3 episodes of the first season I would recommend fast forwarding some of the violence because it's like not even just like Game of Thrones violence. It's like you might have trauma response violence. It was like, how is this even being on television? Like, it's kind of like, I felt like it was really crossing a line. But anyway, but back to the sex. The sex scenes were great. And it was just like, wow, like how did they even, it's not porn, it's not, but it's like you really care about the characters. And it's like, wow, this is so nice. Like it was like something that was like, anyway, that was my escapism over the holidays.
Wow. Okay. So, well, maybe the escapism episode is really just our erotica episode, because the thing I was going to mention that
Ooh.
I got sucked into, and listeners, in case you don't know, I also host a podcast called Feminist Erotica. Also, wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find it. But for one of our episodes, we interviewed this author named Katrina Jackson.
Ooh.
It's her pen name. And she is a professor by day, and then she writes these like obviously really steamy erotica stories and books. And she had mentioned that I think it's maybe her first novel was her most popular. It's called Pink Slip.
Okay.
And she recommended that we read it. And she likes writing about, she's a woman of color, a queer woman of color. So she likes writing queer characters and people of color characters. And she specializes in polyamorous triads. That's the way she put it, right? So she was such a blast, and she was so generous with her time. We were having all kinds of technological problems during our interview. She was super chill. She just hung out with us. And New Year's Day, I started reading Pink Slip, and there are 6 books in that series. And I think I've read 3.5 of them and a short story. Like, it's super addictive, and it's about spies, and they're all horny all the time. And like everybody lusts after everybody sleeps with everybody. It's amazing.
Oh my gosh. Okay, wait. So Pink Slip is the name of the book, and the name of the author, again, what's her name?
Katrina Jackson.
Katrina Jackson.
She's amazing.
I will be looking this up. And also a polyamorous triad, back to that. Does that mean that you're having a threesome, but you're polyamorous? Like, I'm confused.
Oh my God. So the main characters, I feel so trashy talking about this, but it's so good. So the
great.
main character is this woman who is the administrative assistant, personal assistant for this couple, and the couple are spies. And she lusts after both of them for 3 years. So yes, I won't know spoilers, but yeah, polyamorous triads.
Got it. Good to know. You know, I really feel like there's something to this conversation, because I feel like there's the whole idea of like pleasure and the whole idea of, you know, erotica and all of that stuff. And like, it's like that is, I mean, I've been hearing from so many people, this is an act of resistance to like actually enjoy yourself in different ways, like during this really hard time or any time. But really, like, there's a lot of like value to that.
Absolutely. And I will tell you, I was looking back at our topic list. We have an Airtable, listeners, of like all of the guests, our guest wish list and all of the topic wish lists, and sex is on there like 10 times. There's like 87 entries, and like 10 of them have to do with sex. So
like, I think we forgot that we put it on there, and then we're like, oh, sex. And then like 3 weeks later, we're like, oh, don't forget sex.
I mean, some of them are different, but they're all basically, they're all basically that.
Correct. Totally. I mean, I think that there's a lot like that. If that is your brand of escapism, why not? Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
I feel like we also, obviously, we're planning to come back to this topic, not just sex, but escapism, and the notion of using pop culture or using literature or using television or YouTube to give your brain a break. We have to have Dr. Tanya Israel back on to talk about Buffy.
Yes.
So
Dr.
stay
Israel,
tuned for that.
If you're listening, we will be reaching out.
We can't wait to talk to you about Buffy. So,
oh my gosh, exactly. Like Buffy, and like also just like, I don't know, reruns of different shows that are just, that make you feel good. Like, that's a great escapism piece. Like, I used to feel so guilty when I was like, oh, I'm watching too much TV. You know what? No, like, no. That's from before times. That's before COVID that we even had conversations like that. Like, let's just be honest with ourselves. Like, if TV is the thing that makes you feel good, indulge. Who cares?
I mean, and do you really, I know I always say this thing about brain chemistry, but giving your brain a break is a real thing. You need that shot of dopamine. You need that shot of feel good stuff in your brain, especially at this time when everything else, every other thing pouring into your brain is so hard and awful and terrible and terrifying. Exactly. Just give it a break. Like, I think it's not only a valid thing, it's necessary.
Today's episode is brought to you by my Joy and Vulnerability virtual writing workshops. So for a lot of you who have been listening to this podcast for a while, Karen and I do funny and not always serious, legitimate advertisements. This one is a little bit different. This is an actual ad. So me, Katie Morell, I host monthly writing workshops on the third Friday of every month. They're capped at 8 women, and they're really, really fun. I did a lot of them in 2020, and I'm extending them to 2021, and I'm going to be actually building out a few more. But if you want to find out more, just go to my website. It's KATIEMORELL.com, katiemorell.com. And I would love to have you. They're limited to women, and they're 2 hours each. And we go through some really fun and easy writing prompts. And then we have judgment-free sharing, where we talk about what we wrote, only if you want to. And then we have dance breaks that are 60 seconds long, and we dance to people like ABBA and Lizzo and Diana Ross and other people that are really, really fun. And then we wrap up, and I find that it helps people feel less alone. And a lot of the women who have taken my workshops, they rave about them and they're really great. So please join me. If you have any questions, you can always reach out via my website or on Instagram through Not Okay Pod or on Twitter. Thanks so much. I found that, I know I've talked about it before here, but like baths are something that have been like very, very nourishing to me. And if the listeners, if you work from home and if you have even seriously a pocket of 10 minutes, like 15 minutes, like truly set your timer, like go to the bathroom, check an email, turn on your faucet, come back 3 minutes later, and then just like set a timer on your phone for 7 minutes and sit in your bathtub for 7 minutes. You'll be back at your desk in time for your next fucking meeting. Like, it's fine and you will feel different. I guarantee it. Like, I just cannot stress how warm water can solve things, at least for me.
I love how into baths you are. I really appreciate it. And we got to get some kind of bath bomb sponsor in the future.
Right. Bubbles, something, Epsom salts, whatever. We're in the market. Yes. If you own or know someone who owns a company that is looking for podcast sponsorships, please reach out.
Also, feel free to send Katie and I samples of your bubble bath products.
Yes, we will need to sample everything for a few months before we So
that's exactly right.
If you could just send us lifetime supplies, that would be ideal. Thanks so much. But yes, other escapism things. I mean, honestly, Instagram, like I need to turn off the, screen time, like your screen time is up 30% this week or whatever. I'm like, just, screw you, screen time app. I don't care. Like, yeah. It's okay.
I think, and I think a lot of us are Instagram refugees from Twitter. Like, when Twitter gets to be too much, I go to Instagram and I go to Pinterest, unfortunately, which is like such a rabbit hole.
Yes. What do you look up on? Do you look like home decorating ideas on Pinterest, or what do you look on there? I don't use Pinterest that much. I don't think I'm good at it. I don't really know how to use it exactly.
Oh my God. I use it for because I just moved and I have so little furniture that I look. Yes, now my Pinterest is full of nightstands, for instance, but like I use it for recipes. I use it for organizing stuff. I follow the home edit on there. Ooh. And I have a friend who's taking a, shout out to you, Colette, if you're listening, she is taking a novel writing class.
Oh, cool.
I don't want to give too much away. And the person teaching it had them all create a Pinterest board for their novel. Like, what are your characters wearing? What does it look like where they live? What do their homes look like? I thought that was so genius.
Okay, that is like full on genius. That's so interesting. Yeah. Because having like a visual representation of what your characters are going through, so it's not all in your brain. Yeah. Oh my gosh. You could have like writing workshops that are Pinterest integrated. Like, totally. Oh my gosh, yeah. Karen, if you ever hosted a writing workshop that is like integrated with Pinterest, I would so 100% take it. I'm not even kidding. I'm actually like really excited about this idea because as a writer, I don't think in that way. Like, I don't think in the way of like thinking about color or thinking about texture and I know that's a good thing to think. Like, it's just a different way, a different dimension to think in. That's such a good idea.
It's such a good idea. And it's not something, like you're saying, it's not something I ever have done as a writer because I was trained as a journalist and I spent 6 years as a breaking news reporter. So you don't talk about what he's wearing. Yes. Unless you're describing a suspect like that. I just feel like that's not where my brain goes. And I haven't really done any kind of like long form journalism where you have these lengthy descriptions of your subjects. So I totally love it.
I'm the same exact way. I really think like novelists are my heroes. Like novelists or like like narrative nonfiction book writers where I'm like, how did you make this interesting? Like I'm the same as you. Like I went to journalism school. Like I'm very much about the facts. Like I find that like I'm only interested in, even when I write my own newsletter, I'm writing about like things in my life. Like nothing is a lie. Like nothing is a fabrication, not down to the most minute detail. So yes. Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah. And the idea of like, I mean, the whole fantasy writing world of creating a world, I forget what the term is for it, but like you get to create this whole other planet or this whole other reality, and you get to decide what the ground looks like and what people, you know, all the you get to make up languages, like all of that stuff. I'm totally with you. I just like my breaking news reporter brain's just like,
Right.
if I can't verify it.
Right, exactly. Like, isn't someone gonna fact check this shit? Like, isn't like this is going to be like I know I'm with you. I want to though, because like how creative is that? At least it seems like so creative to just like create a world or create like a person even. Like, because I think that even if I put together a character, I would be like, oh well, I'm gonna base this on someone I know or something like that. Okay, I did think of one thing that I did as I guess it's like active escapism. I think my preferred brand of escapism is more like do nothing and scroll or just sit in a hot bath. But I did do something more active over the holidays, which I did a Zoom scavenger hunt event. And I didn't even know this thing existed. So basically, have you ever heard of Airbnb Experiences?
No.
So I didn't know it existed either. Basically, like I think I don't know. I guess like 2 years ago or so, Airbnb was trying to expand. I mean, this is not an ad for Airbnb, although yes, we would absolutely take your sponsorship money. But Airbnb was trying to expand its products, I guess, and they created this entire section of their business called Airbnb Experiences. It's accessible on their apps and website and whatever. Anyway, and the whole thing was like if you go to a place, you can hire like a local tour guide, or you can hire like, and it had like very specific things like try this photography workshop while you're in San Francisco for $59, whatever. But it was kind of cool actually. They did a really good job curating like legit people who like small businesses, like they were really trying to prop up small businesses. Anyway, and so now of course all of that is online, and it doesn't even matter where you are, but you can go on like a tour guide in Rome can like take you like on like a like a camera through the streets like in real time, like you can feel like you're somewhere. It's like super cool. Like they do all this kind of stuff. Anyway, they have drag queen shows, they have like cocktail hours, they have brunches that they can make. It's like cooking classes. Anyway, there was one that I took over the holidays that was this living room scavenger hunt. It was $11 per person, and it was 1 hour to the minute. And basically Tyler and I logged on, and then we had friends log on, and there were maybe like 4 or 5 other people that we didn't know, but like it was actually really fun. It like was a total escapist thing where she was asking us to like find certain things, and it was all very, I mean, kids could have done it. There was nothing even remotely X-rated about it. Like it was just like find random like costumes that you have, whatever. It was just really fun to do something different. And after an hour I was like, oh, it was nice.
Right. Well, and we have on our list, that sounds like so much fun. And we do have on our list of topics the importance of play. I know we've talked about that before, but
Yes.
that's a great escapism example. Like, because you're still using a part of your brain and all that stuff. Yeah.
Totally. And you feel like you're in community, and like you don't actually have to think much because there's a moderator, like there's a total facilitator that she's handling everything. But you're right, play is a big part of escapism for me. Like the other day I was sometimes I make these postcards where I like collage things from magazines, and I just like glue stick them on, and I don't know, it's just kind of fun to do. And I like using like a X-Acto knife, and so I'm like, this is kind of fun. And so I was just like listening to music and doing that for like 2 hours, and I'm just like, oh, I didn't think about anything else.
Yeah. I want to also encourage people to try out a bunch of different things. Like I had no idea about the Zoom scavenger hunt. I know we've talked about going to watch parties, like where you watch a movie with your friends. I guess it was just yesterday, I was having a conversation with people kind of about along this same line. And everybody in the circle was talking about how much they hate puzzles. Like, that was really funny.
I hate puzzles. I'm one of those people.
What is that? I mean, I used to enjoy them a lot. The last one I tried to put together, I couldn't get through it because my cats kept sitting on it. And it was chewing on the piece. I mean, it was really it was laughably bad. But yeah, it was just really interesting. There are all of these things that like we as a culture have like glommed onto, right? We all went through the sourdough making phase. We all went through the puzzle phase. We all went through the coloring book phase. And it's like, if that stuff's not your jam, it's fine. There are a million things you can do to give your brain a break. I just thought it was funny. The like anti-puzzle sentiment was very strong with this group of people.
Right? It's like, that's hilarious. I mean, I've tried puzzles. If they're more than like 300 pieces, which I know is like 8 years old and under, I'm like, oh, I'm out. No thanks. I'm a really bad sport about that stuff. I'll admit it.
Well, and then it just like keyed into this part of everybody's brains, like, what do you do with it when you're done with it? Say you finish it. Where are you going to put it? You put it together. Took you all this time. You're just going to take it apart again. Like it really, really got under people's skin.
Yeah, definitely. Like, what is the meaning of this? Are you going to mount it on your wall in like a professional framing situation? But then you have to glue each piece. Anyway, yeah, it's a whole thing.
Before we close, I do want to make sure, I know I groaned earlier when we said MLK Day. It really was not fueled by MLK Day. It was about sheer exhaustion. But I do want to mention, as you were listening to this, it is MLK Day. I hope many of you have this day off. And I hope that you can participate in some way in a day of service, virtually or safe distanced in your community. And I also want to direct you to rebelliousmagazine.com. We have a piece on the site right now about some virtual MLK Day events. And they're in the Chicago area, but of course they're virtual, so anybody can sign up for them. And I also just want to say, like, I always love MLK Day for many reasons, but one of them I will admit is that typically every Sunday, every year, the Sunday before MLK Day, I have a Martini Luther King party.
Oh, what?
Yeah, Martini Luther King. It's like one of the best things ever. And people come over and we eat soul food and we do civil rights trivia, and I give away absolutely ridiculous prizes. One of my favorites being my bald coworker who kept winning the Afro pick. Like, it's
amazing.
super fun. And if you want to have a virtual MLK Day Martini Luther King party, I encourage it. It's very fun. You don't have to drink martinis. You can drink whatever you want. Have some soul food, have some trivia. It's great.
That's genius. And we will link to the Rebellious article with the MLK virtual events in the description of this podcast. But happy MLK Day to everyone listening. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week. Oh, and this is our last episode of season 2. So join us next week for the inaugural episode of season 3. I don't know if that's the right word, but
yeah.
Join us next week for the launch of season 3. Get excited for new things that you will find when you start listening. Yeah. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Okay.